Okay, one of our learning targets was to use square roots in solving a real life situation. So here it is. These are our favorite. All right, in this example, a cell phone tower has a guy wire for support as shown. So if you're not familiar with what a guy wire is, let's look at the picture. Here's our cell phone tower. So it's a wire that goes from the top. It's kind of slanted and it connects to the ground in a little hook down there on the ground, some distance away. So if you've ever seen any support wires going from the ground kind of up to the top, or maybe it attaches near the top, that's what they call a guy wire. All right, the height of the tower, right here, and the distance from the tower to where the guy wire is secured on the ground are the same distance. So if you notice, they labeled this with an X right here, and they labeled this with an X right there. That might be hard to see on your picture in kind of the black and white, or maybe you can see it. Either way, let's see. What is the height of the tower? So we can see we have a triangle because the ground is horizontal and the cell tower is vertical. We have a right angle, and we're talking about the sides of a right triangle. So we are going to use Pythagorean theorem. As a reminder, Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. In our right triangle, c squared has to be the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is going to be the longest leg. It's the leg that does not touch the right angle. And then just another little trick, if you have your right angle, you know how we do that little box, that corner points to the hypotenuse. So that is side C. The other two sides we can label however, maybe this will be side A, this can be side B, and then let's just plug in the labels on our triangle. So A and B are the same length and they're both labeled with an X. So we're going to substitute in an X for A and an X for B. So x squared plus x squared equals side C is our hypotenuse, which in the picture they told us was 200 feet long. So equals 200 squared. All right, what's nice about these two terms is they're like terms, so we actually can combine those. Here's 1x squared plus 1x squared, so we have two of those, so 2x squared equals, now that 200 squared, that's going to be a big number. 200 times 200 is 40,000. We are working on finding what is the height of the tower. Height of the tower is our x value, so we're going to solve for x. We're going to isolate the x squared by dividing by 2. 40,000 divided by 2 is 20,000. And now we're going to square root both sides. Square root of x squared is x equals, we do want to remember we get two solutions when we square root in an equation. And then we might grab our calculators to see what is the square root of 20,000. What you'll notice is that it's some decimal answer. So let's practice reducing radicals. How can we break down that 20,000? So often, not often, sometimes, numbers are just too big for you to start dividing by all your perfect squares. You're going to be there forever. So let me help you out on this one. And here's a little kind of trick you can use when you are reducing radicals. 20,000 can be written out as 2 times 100 times 100. So that might have been tricky to come up with on your own, but once we kind of see how this works, you'll start to get better at this. So 100 times 100 is 10,000 times 2 is that 20,000. So we are square rooting everything in here. So square root of 2, can't square root it. I'm going to circle it to indicate that that's going to stay. Square root of 100 is 10. Square root of this 100 is 10. Anything that we were able to square root is going to go out in front, and we multiply those together. So 10 times 10 is 100. And then what were we not able to square root? That 2. So x equals plus or minus 100 times the square root of 2. So let's think about what we just found. the height of the tower is a measurement. It's part of this triangle. Mathematically, we get two answers, a positive and a negative answer. But realistically, in the context of this problem, that negative answer would not make sense. So the height of the tower is just going to be the positive value. So it's just going to be the positive 100 root 2. And then just to get a sense of, well, how tall is that actually? That's about equal to 141.4 feet, just rounded to the nearest tenth. All right, so that answers that question. Now let's look at a follow-up question. Find the distance from the base of the tower, so the base of the tower is down here, to the midpoint of the guy wire. So a midpoint is the middle point. If we look at the guy wire, we know that it is 100 feet long. So if this point right here is the midpoint, it's going to cut that 100 feet in half, or that 200 feet in half. I might have just said 100 feet a second ago. I already had the number in my head. We know that that segment is 100 and that segment is 100. So what they're asking us to find is the distance from the base of the tower to the midpoint. So they labeled it with a Z. So we're trying to figure out what this is. Now, what we have is another right triangle right here. And then see how they made this note, same distance. We already knew from the problem above that this height was the same as this distance along the ground. And we just figured out that that was a 100 root 2. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in 100 root 2 for that side of our triangle. All right, so we can do Pythagorean theorem again. Remember A, B, and C, find your right angle, go across. That is going to be side C. So the other two sides, we can use Z for A, so Z squared, plus our B is that 100 squared, equals our C is the 100 root 2 squared. Okay, so when we simplify this, Z squared will stay as Z squared. Let's square the 100. 100 times 100 is 10,000, equals, now when we're squaring this, that means this gets multiplied by itself. So we're going to have 100 times 100, which is 10,000, and then square root of 2 times square root of 2. If you square a square root, it is going to cancel that, giving us just a positive 2. Or if you think square root of 2 times square root of 2 is the square root of 4, we would multiply those together. Well, now we've got a perfect square, so we can go ahead and square root that to get back to that 2. All right, let's go ahead and multiply that 10,000 times 2. So we have Z squared plus 10,000 equals 20,000. Solving for Z, we will subtract this 10,000. Get to write a lot of zeros in this example. So Z squared equals 10,000. We're going to square root both sides to figure out what Z is. And 10,000, actually, if you were to square root that on your calculator, is a perfect square. Let's remember we get two answers when we square root when solving. Square root of 10,000 is 100. So Z, which was that distance they asked for, is, we only care about the positive value because we're measuring a distance, is 100 feet.